Welcome on, welcome all. Thank you for tuning in to Cedar Radio, your guide to films playing at the Art House for the week of February 8th to February 14th. My name is Aaron Spears.
And I'm Dave Huffman. On this week's episode, we'll be discussing the 3 different Oscar-nominated shorts programs, live action, animated, and documentary.
We'll also be discussing the Sundance Film Festival, Netflix stealing art house movies away from the theater. The Directors Guild of America presented their awards for Directors of the Year. And we will be discussing filmmakers who launched their career by first getting nominated for an Oscar for their short film work. Well, we always like to start off the show with the last scene first. So, Dave, what is the last film you've seen?
So the last film I saw was Dan Gilroy's new movie, Velvet Buzzsaw, on Netflix. I was extremely excited for it since I'm a huge fan of Nightcrawler and some of his other writing and things. And this movie I thought was just completely entertaining. It's very kind of like campy and kind of almost over the top. It's not nearly as good of a film overall as Nightcrawler, but
True.
I just thought it was a lot of fun, and I pretty much enjoyed every moment of it.
That's a first for the show, I think, because that was also the last film I saw as well. Yeah,
there you go.
I snuck it in after watching Polar on Netflix because I didn't really want to talk about Polar on the show. Yeah, I was really looking forward to it as well. It was that expectation, though, in my head where I was wanting more like Nightcrawler, which is definitely there. It's a very dark, but it's like the seedy, like exterior belly of the art world rather than like the underbelly of, crime journalism and photography and whatnot.
Yes, it is a brightly lit, full of color, dark, weird comedy, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
The performance I kept thinking of was we mentioned Jake Gyllenhaal when we were talking about Wildlife a few months back, and how I just don't appreciate how good he really is.
Right.
I don't know why that hasn't stuck in my head, but within like 5 minutes of him popping up on this film, I was like, this is great. Like I didn't know I wanted him to play this type of role, but he was kind of like, I thought he was going for comedy at first, but he really I don't know, lives in that character, and
he really does.
Buying it. Yeah, by the end,
he was great in that. I enjoyed how kind of just totally weird he was.
Yeah,
but he doesn't always do that successfully. I wasn't crazy about his performance in Okja. If you've seen that,
he
was very kind of grating in that. So he doesn't always get it right, but this one,
but he's swinging for the fences in a non-Nicolas Cage style,
exactly.
Controlled.
That is a very good way to put it. Yeah, could you imagine? Anyone else could have just chewed up the scenery trying to do that, but he did a great job. And I generally have always kind of traditionally disliked Rene Russo in most movies, but Dan Gilroy is making me like Rene Russo because I loved her in Nightcrawler and I loved her in this. So I have to take back some of my kind of disdain for her, I think.
Well, it could be maybe just projects she was picking over the years, because she definitely got pegged in that romantic comedy kind of opposite Kevin Costner kind of role for a long time. And
she just drove me crazy.
Now that, when you're married to somebody who's writing and directing, being like, hey, you want me to write you a great part? That'd be great. Yeah, let's do this.
And I thoroughly enjoyed it. So
it was one of those too that like all the performances were great. I didn't see a trailer. Did you watch the trailer for this movie?
I did watch the trailer, yeah.
So I just knew it was the new Dan Gilroy film, and I was going into it as blind as I could.
Right.
So the horror aspects to it, I was just like, oh, we're doing this. Okay. So that kind of caught me off guard because it so well captures, I'm assuming, because I have no contact with the art scene in LA, but it felt so perfectly captured, just the vanity of chasing the next big thing and looking for like the big paycheck in the art world, rather than, hey, is the art any good? What is anybody responding to this? Well, the artificiality to it.
And of course, the film also featured a great performance by Toni Collette, who we love, and I loved her look in the movie. I loved everything about her.
Yeah,
I thought she was great, and I think she has one of the best. No spoiler alert, since it's in the trailer. Like one of the great death snes too. Like it's kind of an off-screen death scene, but the way it's kind of played,
it's so perfectly worked in with the art world itself. And it was very good. Yeah. That was actually the scene where like I kind of turned because I wasn't sure. I was like, is he balancing this whole like the grotesque like nature of these the killings with the whole art scene? But then as soon as he got to her scene, I was like, nope, that's perfect. That's the way you build up to that one there.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm just sad that I didn't get to see it in the theater because I think it would have been even better.
Yeah, it was actually kind of like a penciled in New Year's resolution for me because there were so many movies that Netflix is getting that I was like, those are all like art house kind of movies. Like that's a movie that would play in the art house the way, Nightcrawler, limited release, slowly built, buzz. So I'm trying to actually keep up with them as they come out rather than like, oh, I'll put it in my queue, I'll get to it later. It's like, no, you just need to click play and watch it right now.
Because otherwise, the way that
they just stack
Netflix,
up.
they just stack up and you'll never get to it.
In looking up, there's this new Steven Soderbergh film coming in like 2 weeks. So it's like, there we go.
Yep, there you go. They're all fast-tracked in the Netflix queue.
At the Art House this week, we opened Pavel Pawlikowski's Cold War, finally, and also They Shall Not Grow Old, which we discussed on last week's episode. Cold War, you just that jazzy score just echoes through the lobby. It's great. I can't.
Are people enjoying it?
They're enjoying it. Yeah,
Good.
It's a lot of words like bleak coming out of it, but like no one's saying it's bad or anything. Or just like it's very bleak. It's very
It is. It's a beautiful, lovely film, but it's ultimately a tragic love story. So, it's a very good movie.
It's like the definition of like the art house foreign film. It's black and white. It's a foreign language. It's cripplingly depressing.
Like I said,
everything there, but
it ticks so many kind of art house cliches, but it does it so well in an original way, and I loved it.
Honestly, one of the top comments when people come out is like, that movie is like 80 minutes. Because it's a nice brisk one. And usually it's like a 3-hour-long, black and white, somber epic there. But then also They Should Not Grow Old, the Peter Jackson World War I documentary. I grabbed a couple numbers because I think we'd mentioned since we showed, 4 shows as a special event, that it was doing so good that Warner Brothers decided, okay, this just needs to play in theaters as a regular release. It's already hit as a documentary the 10 million mark, which
is huge.
As we were talking about last year, as we kept going week after week with Three Identical Strangers and Free Solo and RPG and Neighbor, that's a huge milestone for documentaries. So just for a few bits of comparison, Three Identical Strangers ended up with 12 million. So it's already in 1 week of releases going for that. Free Solo was 14, so was RBG, and Won't You Be My Neighbor was 22. So the technically, since this was a They Should Not Grow Old, a 2018 movie, it's still part of that year of the documentary.
I guess you're right.
Last year, I guess. As far as history, we'll look at it. In some of the art house news this week, the awards season is rolling right along. The Directors Guild of America had their awards. They do a ceremony, right?
Yes, they do.
Carried anywhere? Televised?
I don't think
streaming?
It's not televised that I know of, but I mean, there's definitely all kinds of pictures of all the people holding up their awards online. So
well, the big winners as far as the film world is concerned were Bo Burnham for 8th Grade, which is their first time director award.
Like best first feature.
And Alfonso Cuarón as the best director of the year, so best film then as far as they're concerned. So then with the Academy voting, if you're in the Directors Guild, I assume you're in the Academy?
Not necessarily, but there's a lot of overlap in all of those guilds.
Because all the articles were mentioning like this is an early indicator of how the Oscars could go. Which
I think that, again, for the Oscars, it's the people in each of those categories. So like directors are nominating directors and things like that, and actors are nominating actors. But then everybody gets to vote on the pictures. The awards. So once they're actually, the nominations are out there, so everyone's voting for the director. It's not just the directors now to win.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So he, but he's still, I think he's been the favorite for a while now. So I think that he clearly has a great chance of taking home the Oscar for Roma.
I wonder if that's why hasn't director and picture been split a bunch?
It has been
more so recently.
More
than it
recently
had been in the past.
It used to be always.
It was a lock. Whoever announced director, oh, there's the picture one too.
But not anymore. So they definitely have split it up more in the last probably like 15 years.
I wonder if that's when they started doing more than 5 nominees for Best Picture. Maybe that caused.
We'll have to we'll do a little deep dive analytics on that.
Look at that. As a quick report, because neither one of us were there, but looking at the reporting on the Sundance Film Festival, which just wrapped up in the last week, I think, or just in the last few days. But so it's all very, very fresh. A bunch of critics are posting their reviews of certain movies there. Most of the reporting that initially comes out of Sundance before the movies actually trickle out to the rest of us here in outside of Park City, Utah, is how much money the movies are sold for, which on one hand kind of drives me nuts because it's like a weird horse race thing of like the business aspect.
But I love it because sometimes they spend so much money on something that then whenever you finally see it come out and you go, that's what they thought was worth that much money?
It really sometimes gives you the example of that festival bubble where like, well, sure, everybody was like real hot for it right there. But once it comes out to the rest of us, we're just like, and
everybody keeps, there's been a few things like that because Little Miss Sunshine was such a huge Sundance hit that sort of like set the bar for like, everyone's been always searching for the next Little Miss Sunshine. And every year, for many years, there was always like, this is going to be the next Little Miss Sunshine. And then what you get is absolutely not.
So generally speaking, the Miramax machine, the Weinstein Company, was always one of the big players out there buying up movies. And looking at the numbers this year, it's almost entirely in Amazon, which who's got bigger pocketbooks other than Disney, I guess, which isn't really out there, than Amazon to be buying content. So I guess the ones to keep an eye on would be they bought a couple movies for $14 million each, which just seems to, I don't know, boggles my mind. Is that like, it just seems weird for independent film now where you're like, you're spending that. Good for the filmmakers. They got their movies sold. They're going to definitely see the light of day because you want to get a return on that investment. But you've got one movie, Brittany Runs a Marathon, went for 14, which tied The Report at 14. And then most of the reporting I saw was for a film, Late Night, went for 13 million. Nisha Gantra directed that one, but it's Mindy Kaling from the
Mindy Kaling movie. Yes, from the Mindy Project.
Jeez, I don't know how I can't remember that name.
It's such a hard name.
So
to
she
remember.
wrote it and stars in it, and then Emma Thompson.
I was joking that I think you could just buy Mindy Kaling for less. I mean, like, don't you think if you like?
Oh, like to star in your movie, or
yeah, I mean, like, I bet Mindy Kaling would just come over to your house for a lot less.
Oh, sure,
like,
yeah, that's true.
So I bet if I don't know, just buy a friend.
Wasn't that the idea through the Fire app? That they were trying to work out through the Fire Festival was rent a celebrity
exactly,
for
rent a celebrity. Yep, just if you were swiping left or right for a celebrity match for the right amount of money.
Her film Late Night was getting a lot of talk as like what you're saying, like the next Little Miss Sunshine. Right. The framing was, it's the next The Big Sick, which was an Amazon acquisition from Sundance, which was quite a hit. This one has Emma Thompson playing a late night talk show host, and then Mindy works for her, I believe, as a writer. So Mindy, she stars in it, she wrote it. There's also a lot of the reporting was on representation at Sundance because there was a very concerted effort to have a diverse, not only press pool covering it, but also in the filmmaker lineup as well. One of the other films from director Lulu Wang is The Farewell, starring Awkwafina, which sold to A24 for $6 million.
Right.
And read everything, just rave reviews for that one. Tearjerker.
That was actually voted best film by all the critics there. So they did a critic survey, and the critics pool, they picked The Farewell as their best film. And
there was one other one that Mike Wendt was on the show a few weeks back from the Greater Cleveland Film Commission. He mentioned a film shot here in Cleveland that he worked on called Native Son, which at the time he said was a A24 film, which we had said we'll be watching that at the theater pretty shortly here. That actually ended up being sold to HBO for American rights. So
gotcha.
Hopefully we'll still see that on the big screen.
Yeah, sometimes HBO films, they do theatrical, but a lot of them are just direct to HBO. So,
quick shout out. There's a couple documentaries at Sundance always pique my interest because there's a lot of interesting documentary programming going on there. There is a 4-hour movie called Leaving Neverland. That was a documentary on Michael Jackson and the allegations, and they actually have victims on camera addressing the situation.
I've had more people ask me if we're going to be playing the Michael Jackson documentary in the last week and a half than anything else. We've gotten a few emails about it here. I've had just friends texting and asking me if we're going to be playing it because it was very controversial. People were very disturbed by it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of
a very unflinching look is what I've read about it.
So it is probably... It'll be interesting to see how this affects his legacy because his legacy is right now, everyone's kind of been aware of these stories, these allegations, and then, but yet, Thriller is still very popular around Halloween.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's kind of, a rite of passage every October. When is the first time you hear Thriller on the radio? So we'll find out if that continues or if this actually makes him sort of an untouchable part of pop culture.
One of the critics, I think it was at IndieWire, filed their review for it, and it was even saying that everybody's that's paying attention to Michael Jackson over the years has heard these sort of accusations floating around, but when it's a quiet settlement, you don't get a whole lot of press coverage to it, and seeing it all condensed into a 4-hour well, condensed isn't the right word for 4 hours probably, but condensed into a 4-hour documentary, wait, that one too, and it just sort of piled up, and he said it was just such a powerful effect there. There was also a Harvey Weinstein documentary on Harvey Weinstein that played there. It seemed like kind of the expose theme going on at the film festival this year. And we'll be right back with the new films opening this week after we tell you about a few of our special events coming up. Coming up this weekend, the Melt Bar & Grill Late Shift Film Series continues with our monthly showing of The Room, February 9th at 10 p.m. Bring your own spoons.
Fathom Events and Aniplex present I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, which, of course, we both, I think, say is the best title of the year.
It's up there, yeah. It's going to be one of my nominees, sure.
I love that title. This will be the dubbed version of this new animated film, and that is February 10th at 12:55 p.m.
Fathom Events and Lionsgate are also presenting a special Valentine's Day showing of Dirty Dancing, February 10th at 4 p.m., which isn't exactly Valentine's Day, but it's the weekend.
It's getting you ready for it.
Yeah, it's getting you ready for it. So Dirty Dancing, February 10th at 4 p.m. And we are back with the new films opening this week at the theater. I did a unofficial count, and I think it's 22 Oscar-nominated films showing currently at the theater because we are opening up 3 different short film packages. We've got the animation, the live action, and the documentary. This year's animation lineup is Bow, Late Afternoon, Animal Behavior, Weekends, and One Small Step. Were there any standout animated films amongst those that you would want to hand the award to right now, Dave?
Well, this year, I mean, Bow, a lot of people have seen that because it's a Pixar film that played, I believe, in front of Incredibles 2 this year, which is a typical Pixar,
that's how they do it.
Very, very well done.
One of the few times you get to see a short film on the big screen at a multiplex all year long.
And I actually thought it was a little bit weird because it's kind of about a little kind of piece of food that's alive. It's a strange little movie. And
Pixar anthropomorphized something that, okay,
and
weird.
But speaking of anthropomorphism, I guess that's the right word, right? Animal Behavior, which was actually probably my favorite one, which is just about kind of a group therapy session of a bunch of different animals. So it was kind of hilarious, I thought, and all the different animals being kind of self-aware of their own little thing, and then whenever the gorilla comes in, you're just sort of like, yeah, it's just being a gorilla, he can't, it's like an anger management thing for a gorilla. It's very entertaining. I enjoyed that one quite a bit. And then we also have the live action Oscar nominated shorts playing this year, which features Detainment, Fauve, Marguerite, Madre, and Skin. Those are the 5 nominated ones. And Aaron, I don't think you've gotten to see any of the live action ones.
I didn't see any of the live action ones, no.
They are a typically not cheery bunch. Usually there seems like one comedy kind of sneaks into them. It's almost always like kind of 4 dramas and a comedy. This year they're all dramas.
All dramas, all right.
And several of them have a kind of recurring theme of sort of children in peril or child endangerment and kind of things like that. And one of them, actually probably my favorite one, was one that's been a little controversial over in England. It's called Detainment. And it's based on the actual transcripts of these 2 10-year-old boys who they killed another little child, like a little, I think the kid was 2 or 3. And I remember the story when it was in the news, and it was just this terrible thing because they were actually tried as adults, as 10-year-olds.
Right.
And it's a very unsettling film, and it's the 2 boys that play the child killers in it. Mm-hmm. They're amazing actors. I mean, just really incredible performances from such young kids.
Right.
I thought it was very, very effective. So I think that was probably my favorite of them.
I have a question just to jump back to the animation one real quick. This is one of those categories which we'll be talking in a minute with our Cedar Lead 3 picks this week, but that seems to be could be a springboard for animators to make a big splash, as it were. We're talking about different styles of animation too, like hand drawn versus computer versus.
Yes, very much so. There's a wide variety. That one that I liked, Animal Behavior, has a very rough kind of hand drawn look to it, even though I believe it's probably computers. But
at this point,
And Bow, like we said, is very much Pixar. And then there's a French one, Late Afternoon, I believe it's French, that is very kind of almost painterly in a way, as well as Weekends has a very different kind of style to it. It's very hand-drawn, that one really has like, again, a very painterly kind of effect with like the backgrounds being really kind of...
more like impressionistic?
No, not impressionistic. More like just they're very, like when you see like a classic animation cell where like all the animation is happening, like now with the computer animation, you get a lot more movement and background.
Oh, yeah, it's not just a static background image.
And this has more of that kind of vibe to it.
Gotcha.
When I say that, I guess I'm not probably adept enough with animation.
Your animation
terms.
lingo?
Yeah. To know exactly how to express my thoughts. But they do all visually have a very different vibe to it. Although Late Afternoon reminded me visually of another film that I'd seen, another short film, and I thought it was probably by the same filmmaker, and I looked it up and it was not.
Oh, okay.
So,
good story.
Yeah, great story. I once saw a movie that reminded me of something, but it wasn't that.
And then with the animation too, just as a quick note, someone who tries to get his kids out to the art house as much as possible. Yes. Those are roughly PG-13 kind of territory.
Yeah, they're unrated, but their advisory is that treat them like they're PG.
PG, okay.
Nothing really offensive in them. Actually, there's been a few in the past that have been nominated that would be just R-rated.
Oh, yes, I've seen those.
This year, there's definitely nothing where we have to tell people, all right, leave before the 5th one if you have.
Right. One of my son's favorites was Logorama still, because he was like 6 when he saw it, and I was like, oh, I really should have watched that before I let you watch that one.
The film Weekends has a little bit of sort of like nightmarish kind of imagery. It's about like the boy in it is having like nightmares. So there's some kind of not scary, but like
or like a jump scare or surging music or something.
Yeah, it's just it just has sort of like not every moment of that movie is some beautiful quiet little thing, but it's not bad or anything. But if you have a little kid, they might be a little bit frightened by it.
And then the live action one is more traditional, like probably just rated R, especially hearing about detainment. Like that sounds rough.
Absolutely.
And like you said, they were all pretty bleak and intense. So
yes, the live action ones definitely should be treated as rated R.
All right. And then the last section we have is the documentary section. We've got Black Sheep, Endgame, Lifeboat, A Night at the Garden, Period, End of Sentence.
Yes.
Punctuated as it should be. Period. End of sentence.
End of sentence, period. Yeah. And those are, again, in your typical documentary Oscar fashion, they tend to be a little bit heavy on the subject matter, and this is no exception for that. It wouldn't be an Oscar shorts kind of documentary class if we didn't have at least one that had some sort of World War II theme to it, and that this year is
A Night at the Garden.
A Night at the Garden, which is actually the very rare exception to the shorts in that it literally is short. It's only 7 minutes long.
Yes.
Most documentary shorts tend to be longer than that. So,
and I haven't read too much about this one, but I've seen it twice, and it's I think it's all archival footage.
Yeah, it's archival
of
footage.
This rally gathering at Madison Square Garden in 1939. Nazis gathered there, which is pretty stark contrast having just seen like Black Klansman this particular in 2018, which ended with the Charlottesville footage of Nazis rallying, and so that's pretty bleak and rough, but it also just shows you like
how it didn't
times
take
really
hold here.
Changed
well, but it also
sometimes.
I took it as like this could have been could have taken hold here. You know what I mean?
I see what you mean. Yeah,
I looked at it very much from the like, wow, they were able to fill Madison Square Garden with 20,000 pro-Nazi people in 1939,
right?
And and it's a chilling film, but it's I took it as like, boy, we really.
Dodged a bullet.
Kind of.
That one,
I mean, here in America, obviously, there's still issues, but I looked at it in the kind of historical context of how that did take hold in Europe, and it did not take hold here at the time in the States.
I was just sort of watched it more in awe of just like, I can't believe there were that many.
There's still terrible people in the world.
Crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lifeboat is a really, it's a little bit longer one. That's a 40-minute one. That is a documentary. I want to say it's kind of like a German-Italian co-production, but it's about a nonprofit group that's trying to do their best. They're just concerned citizens who wanted to jump in and help out with the refugee crisis going on in Germany. And it's not all set in Germany. It's kind of around Europe there. But that one is really powerful, but it's shot in that true like journalistic kind of fly on the wall style thing where you see the organizers who just they're literally, putting their passion into action. They're going out and they're helping out with this crisis, but then there's also time taken to document the refugees that are coming in and their stories of like what they're leaving. And as terrible as it is on the seas when they're trying to rescue these, lifeboats that are trying to make the trek, to safety. And then like that's treacherous enough. Then you hear their stories. You're like, oh my God, when that's the best option you have is to hit the seas in a tiny little boat. There's some pretty rough horror stories that they're leaving.
Yeah, and I don't know if anyone came to see Ai Weiwei's film Human Flow that we had just last year. Or was that
I think it's a couple years ago
now? And that again showed the kind of tragedy of the refugee crisis that a lot of people are going through.
It personalizes it in a really great way where it's not just like a whole bunch of numbers like 100,000 people. Like that's an abstract number when you're trying to conceptualize that. This really puts a human touch and human face on it.
And I know two of your favorite filmmakers, Rob Epstein and Jeffrey Friedman. They have an Oscar-nominated short this year.
I'm looking forward to it.
Documentary Endgame, which is a very powerful film about hospice care. So that one obviously is very sad, but it is a really beautiful movie. And of the ones that I've seen, which I haven't actually seen Lifeboat, but of the other ones, I would say Endgame is the one that I'm hoping wins.
There is a little bit of a weirder show structure going on with the documentary. I'm sorry, not the documentary, with all of the shorts that we're showing here. So check the show times and the show notes on your device if you're listening to our voices right now on your device, because not everything plays every single day. And
the documentaries, docs only play 3 days. I think it's Fridays, Sunday, and Wednesday, I believe, are when the docs are playing. And then the live-action animated shorts, I believe, play daily. But
I guess those do play every day, but they alternate times.
They alternate times and things. So it is.
Check your times, and yes, it is possible to do a triple feature if you want to stick around and do that. We will be right back with our Cedar 3 picks for this week after we tell you about a few musical events coming to the theater.
And also this week we have our continuing series of the Met HD on the big screen, and that's for their encore presentation of Carmen on Saturday, February 9th at 12:55.
This is now our second encore for that one. So it's very, very popular.
It's a popular opera, so they actually had 2 encores for this one.
The Bolshoi Ballet presents Les Bayadères, which is going to be showing on Wednesday, February 13th at 7 p.m.
And we have a special concert event, Josh Groban from Madison Square Garden, on February 12th at 7 p.m. This was his sold-out Bridges show.
And we're back with our more traditional Cedarly 3 segment after we've had a string of fantastic guests the last few weeks. So what we usually do is try to pick a topic that is based on what we're showing at the theater and give out some viewing suggestions and recommendations to kind of expand our cinematic horizons. So this week, since we're talking about short films, we decided to take a look at filmmakers who launched their feature film careers with Oscar nominations for their short film work, or in some cases stayed working in short films, but had a feature in there as well that we can recommend. Dave, would you like to start us off?
Sure.
One of your picks?
Well, weirdly, when I was looking through this and we were researching this, there was one year that just stuck out to me because it was like a fantastic, kind of class of nominees. And these, all 3 of my people were nominated in the 2004 live action shorts category. So the first one is Nacho Vigalondo, who was nominated in 2004 for his short 7:35 in the Morning. And he has gone on to direct a film called Time Crimes, which we played at the film festival. I can't remember if it ever played here at the Cedar Lee. I know I saw it at the film festival.
Yeah, that's what I saw too.
But his most recent feature was Colossal, which we did play, which is great. So I really recommend, if you haven't seen Colossal, I think it's streaming on Hulu. I'm not sure if it's on other streaming services, but it's definitely worth checking out if you haven't seen it yet.
Or just, finding physical media.
Yeah, or actually, go...
support a filmmaker.
Support a filmmaker and actually buy a copy. It's a great movie and it's worth seeing for sure.
I hadn't heard the short film that he had done. Is that the basis for Time Crimes?
I just was checking that to make sure that it wasn't, and I don't believe that it was.
Yeah, just because I had a specific time in the morning, and that's kind of key in Time Crimes a little bit.
I just did a quick little search, and it doesn't immediately say that they were inspired by, but I have not seen the short film. So to the best of my knowledge, it is not. If someone out there knows better than me, by all means, email us or tag us on Twitter and let me know.
The first filmmaker I found was Bill Gutentag, which sounds German, but I'm not sure he is. He's got 3 short documentary nominations to his credit so far, because he's still working, and he has 2 wins. He won for The Twin Towers in 2003. Can guess what that's about. And You Don't Have to Die in 1989. So he's also been working. He's got quite a career going for him. And there's somewhat of a theme with the movies that I ended up picking here, or the filmmakers I ended up picking here. He did a feature-length documentary called Soundtrack for Revolution that was in 2009 that played downtown at the film festival.
Yep, I remember that
and was this great kind of activism music documentary that kind of combined modern musicians singing like the protest songs of the 60s. Yeah, 60s. I understand like the social justice, but also there was like feminism mixed in and racial politics. So it was great. You hear like some of the old songs, then you hear like new interpretations of those songs. That one I didn't check if it's streaming, but that's just worth having in your collection because that's just a great kind of time capsule documentary that documents a lot of like archival footage as well in there too.
Well, the next filmmaker on my list is a true Hollywood power player now, and he's hilarious in his own right, and that's Taika Waititi, who is best known kind of for his involvement with the Flight of the Conchords guys in front of the camera. He also wrote and directed, or co-wrote and directed, What We Do in the Shadows, which we've played here at the Cedar Lee as well, which is hilarious.
It's upcoming and serialized sequel, I think, streaming somewhere soon.
Yeah, it has a TV show that he is working on as well, but he was the director of Thor Ragnarok, which was, a monster hit in the Marvel universe. So now he is just on the Hollywood A-list for directors. So he was nominated back in 2004 for a short film called 2 Cars, 1 Night, which I have not seen, but I do want to see it because I honestly didn't realize that he was already an Oscar nominee. That was news to me whenever I was like, oh, Taika is an Oscar nominee?
So that was before he did any of his feature film work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was one of his, it was only he'd done 2 short films before then. It was even before Flight of the Conchords.
Oh, okay.
So, and Aaron, what's the next one on your list?
The next one I have is Jessica Yu, who won in 1996 for Breathing Lessons, The Life and Work of Mark O'Brien, which she's gone on to do a lot of TV work, a lot of high-quality TV work as well, but she also keeps coming back to short documentary subjects over the years and a few feature-length documentaries as well. Breathing Lessons was about this guy, Mark O'Brien, that I read just a little bit about, a poet and an artist, but had the whole, like, lives in an iron lung, like, kind of problems there.
I remember that film.
That is a really interesting one. I'm going to have to find that film because that sounds really good. The feature film I would recommend from her, she did one called In the Realms of the Unreal in 2004 about outsider artist Henry.
I didn't realize that was the same filmmaker. Yeah.
And that movie kept coming up. It was just completely serendipitous. That movie kept coming up while watching Velvet Buzzsaw because it's like a guy who passes away in the very openings of Velvet Buzzsaw, and then his work is discovered after his death. That's what happened in the Realms of the Unreal. And then she does these great little bits of animation to bring his paintings literally to life because he created this whole world where he was like the protector of these children. And
I remember seeing that movie here at the Cedar.
So powerful.
It's a great movie.
Watched it several times. If you can find In the Realms of the Unreal, she is definitely a documentarian to keep an eye on because she's, back and forth, TV, fiction-wise, and then also TV documentaries, short documentaries, feature films. So.
Well, like that filmmaker, the next one on my list, Andrea Arnold, she won her Oscar in 2004. She beat the other guys for her short film Wasp, which if you watch Wasp and then you see her other feature films, you can absolutely see the thread of aesthetics there. It's 100% her aesthetic.
Her style.
She made a film we did not play here at the Cedar Lee. We played it over at the Capitol, and it's called Fish Tank. And it's a fantastic movie. It has Michael Fassbender is in it, a younger kind of Michael
very
Fassbender.
early role for him.
Yeah, before he was a big star, and it's just a great kind of hard-hitting reality kind of. It just feels like real life in this lower class British kind of public housing kind of place. And then she also made another great film that I believe we did play here at the Cedar Lee, American Honey.
Yes, we did.
And it didn't play very long. It was one of those movies that was it was pretty long, as I recall, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
It's like
almost
2.5 hours or 3 hours long.
Not quite 3, but it's up there.
So I think that kind of hurt it as far as a theatrical run. But
people saw it, loved it though.
Yeah, it's a great movie. It was on a lot of people's top 10 lists that year. It was a fantastic movie. So she is an amazingly talented filmmaker, but much like the filmmaker you were just talking about, Aaron, she's also done a lot of TV work. She's done a lot of TV directing, but I look forward to her next feature films because those two are both amazing.
Yeah, she's that kind of Cassavetes, like real working class, handheld aesthetic that really puts you right in the shoes of the characters.
Absolutely.
The last one I have is just because the way I've often on picked on you for just being obsessed with England on the show. I have that same obsession with Danish filmmakers, and so Anders Thomas Jensen. Or Jensen, if I want to pronounce it with my American tongue, I guess. He won in 1998 for Election Night. He actually was nominated 3 years in a row, and then won for his film in 1998, Election Night. He went on. He's mainly been a screenwriter over in Denmark and a couple times over here in America. Most recently, Susan Bier made headlines because she directed Bird Box for Netflix. He wrote several movies for her, Brothers, and a few others back in good old Denmark. But he's directed a few as well, mostly starring Mads Mikkelsen, far better than Polar. Green Butchers, Men and Chicken a couple years ago. He has Adam's Apple as well.
I've not seen that one.
There are these great Danish comedies that have that sense of humor that as you watch them, you're going to laugh, then you immediately feel guilty, and then you immediately think, they would never do that in an American film, which just always makes it kind of like fun, like forbidden fruit comedy to me. So I would say check out any of his directing. He has only directed a few films, but I would say anything that Anders Thomas Jensen has directed is worth checking out.
Awesome.
On next week's episode, we'll be discussing Nadine Lebecki's Capernaum. Most of the actors that she used in that particular film, especially the children that star in it, the main star as well, were non-professional actors. So our Cedar Lee 3 picks next week will be films that feature other filmmakers using non-professional actors in their films. Submit any picks or ideas you may have at Cedar Lee Theater using the hashtag Cedar Lee 3, the number 3. As always, thank you for tuning in to Cedar Lee Radio and lending us your ears this week. All the music heard on the show is original music written by Grant Heineman and performed by the New Heights Jazz Ensemble, used with their permission, of course. Visit clevelandcinemas.com for correct showtimes and to purchase advance tickets. Also, there are links in the show notes. You can use those if you'd like as well. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Cedar Lee Theater, spelled with an R-E at the end because we're fancy like that. Don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you find your podcast, and while you're subscribing, leave us a rating and review, or better yet, tell a fellow film geek about the show. We'll see you at the movies.